Well, guys, we have reached the end of the Ash Maze mine, the end of the Midnight Network scavenger mine. And as we emerge into the light of day, I think there's a more fundamental shift going on, a more important pivot for all of crypto. I think it's finally time for a reset where we abandon all of the fake stuff, all of the Ponzi-nomics, all of the projects that are largely focused on token emissions. It's time to let go of everything fake and embrace the real world. We need to embrace real business and real commerce. It's finally that time for the big crypto reset. If you refuse to leave the scavenger mine unless there's a bunch of moon Lambos waiting outside for us, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining, everyone. Let's see who's here. James Syracuse is here. Daniil is here. All is well. All is well. I think a lot of people in crypto are saying something like that to themselves right now. Hilldog is here. Was here. Thank you for jumping on the comments, even if you have to listen later. I appreciate it very much. BindoCam, thank you for joining on time. Appreciate that. Neo Chad, this is how I feel. I'm very glad mining is done. We're going to talk about it. Let's go, Eric Williams. Let's go. Dr. Doak mentioned that the wife's laptop is now in scavenger mine laptop Valhalla. We knew more little soldiers would fall, so everybody pour one out for Dr. Doak's wife's laptop. We knew some would fall. J Marie, thank you for joining. James Syracuse says, so when tokenized assets happen, is that like a deed to my car or house? So if I get hacked, someone owns my house. This is a problem. This is a hurdle for tokenized assets to overcome. Sir James says, do you think new projects following Midnight Drop style will be a trend? Can an anonymous be trusted? We're going to talk about that a little bit. Actually, that's going to come up. It's definitely one of the items on the list for tonight. Bitcoin on Lace. Yeah, that's always been kind of mentioned. Bitcoin on Lace has always been a thing that Charles has been talking about. Did anyone mining Midnight solve any challenges on the last day? I couldn't get a single one. I'm not sure what problem you ran into. We'll talk about how the mining went for everybody, but I know one of the problems was the sort of the last challenge. What was it, number 472 or something like that? I'm probably messing with the number, but there was sort of a challenge that hit right when the API mining ended and the browser only day started, and we were told to kind of, if our miner was stuck on that one, we were told to sort of reset the miner and it would go ahead and start with a newer challenge. We'll talk about that a little bit. Taz, thanks for joining. What's up? Thank you for joining. BindoCam says, I solved all of them on the last day. You were probably stuck on a previous days when it was still super hard. Yep. This is the problem. Yep. Apologies again for hitting mute yesterday, guys. I apologize. I'm going to try really hard to pay attention to the lights that tell me that we are not on mute. Jose Cano, good evening. Good evening. Let's go. Okay, Dr. Doak says, my old i7 PC managed every challenge on 3 browsers, but my wife's brand new i5 didn't manage any. Yep. Pucky Hawk, just in time. Otis Fricio, thank you for joining. Braxton Tokyo, thanks for joining. AAA Crypto Channel, let's go. BindoCamp says, if you restarted the session, it would abandon the hard difficulty challenge and move on to the easy ones. Yep. That's the instruction we received. Dunky Ned is excited. I'm excited too. Joe Davidson, hi. Thanks for joining. Elliot Adams says, I've been around since your 20th episode or so. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around so long. And thank you for saying that. I really appreciate you sticking around for real. Mark Goings here. Good evening. Good evening. Let's go. Let's go. Joe David says, my question, bit of a hilarious one. If Epstein had BTC he got from investing in code, is that U.S. property now and in the treasury? I don't know the status of confiscations from Epstein's estate and what went into his estate, so I don't really know. And I'm not sure what's the entity you're talking about called Code. Is that an entity called Code that you're talking about? Hola Rulo, thank you for joining. Oh, Core. Did he invest in? Joe Davidson says Core. Did he invest in are you saying he invested in Bitcoin Core? Would that have been like Blockstream? Are you saying he invested in Blockstream or something like that? I don't know. I don't know about his investments, so I wouldn't know. But you can tell me. X Last Gambit says tempted to drop another 40K of this fiat into ADA, fiat garbage into ADA. I was hoping for a 35-cent range dip, but bulls keep messing up my plans. Yep, I hear you. I hear you. This is kind of like a DCA dream. If you've been paying like in the 70s, as recently as we have, to see prices this low is kind of like a dream if you're a buyer. I can't even. Greetings. Thanks for joining. So I wanted to talk about this because I really think this is maybe one of the most important things in crypto right now. So obviously we're leaving the scavenger mine right now, and that's kind of a relief. I'm also relieved that we're kind of leaving it, just like Dr. Doak's wife's laptop. I've been afraid of destroying laptops with a scavenger mine because I'm a very, very heavy user of my laptop, but my laptop is not used to hashing all night long while I'm sleeping. So the 24-hour running of the laptop definitely kind of scared me. So I'm a little bit relieved. I think the last day went great. How much did people mine on the last day? I messed up. I was running 2 laptops, 2 browsers each, so not super heavy. A lot of you were running a lot more browsers than that. I just ran 4 browsers across 2 laptops. On my newer laptop, I completely forgot late at night. I was browsing late at night, looking for topics to talk about today. I completely forgot, and I closed my laptop, turned off the browser miner, which wasn't a problem when I was using the Google Cloud Platform virtual machine. I could just let it run, off in wherever that hardware was located, Iowa, I think. I could just let it keep running in Iowa. And it didn't matter if I turned off my laptop. I completely forgot about that late at night in the darkness as I was sort of, doing my last second before sleep browsing, closed it. So my laptop was off for like 7 hours. My newer and faster laptop, and I think I still mined like 1100 or something like that. Looks like, okay, I'm glad to see most of you did better than that. You probably were smart enough to keep your laptops on. Joe Davidson says 1200. Bindocam says 1350-ish to 1700s. Jay Marie says 2500 from 2 browsers. That's great. That's great. Let's see. Sir James says 1500 per browser. Also great. Otis Fritiov says single browser about 300 last night. Macro Man says 400. Sages and Pages says 950. Oh, and Sir James says that Sir James was using desktops. Okay, cool. Yeah, it looks like most people did pretty well. Obviously, like with this many people participating in, basically like proof of work is basically an algorithm hashing exercise, like a mass hashing exercise. It looks like people did pretty good, and we had about a few people obviously ran into problems. But that's to be expected with this many people participating in something like this. Morning, Malo Blesov. Morning. Last Gambit says, anyone been doing night? Any resource to see how a PC desktop does within a spec range for mining? Yeah, it's all over. Yeah, it's all over, right? The mining just ended. Otis Frichov says, gonna buy some night to reach the goal. Yep, I think there's probably a lot of people in that camp. Yeah, BindoCam is also letting you know X last gambit. The mining ended, a little over, what is it now, like 3-4 hours ago. So the mining is over, unfortunately. But I think even though, so it was fun. This little proof of work experiment. This is like the first proof of work experiment we've ever done in the greater Cardano ecosystem, and I think it was pretty fun. Joe Davidson. It looks like night the phase when night is going to go live, I believe, starts on December 8th. So come back on December 8th, and you will find out what's going on. Yep, BindoCam agrees. December 8th. Brian Packard says, good evening. Jay Marie says December 8th. Yeah, so December 8th is going to be the date. No rhyme intended. So we need to talk about the other big thing that's going on in crypto right now. I think we've finally reached this point. We've reached this level of maturity in crypto. I mean, we've been around since 2009, guys. We've been around since 2009. And we started with this like immense proposition of utility. It was like this brand new invention. Like, how do you solve the Byzantine generals problem, right? Like, how do you reach consensus with, malicious actors being involved in, forming this ledger? There's malicious actors out there. They're going to try to put, fake news into the ledger, you know, namely being that someone, probably them, owns assets that they don't really own. How do we prevent this problem? So Satoshi in the Bitcoin white paper solves this problem, solves the Byzantine generals problem, and presents this novel technology that solves this gigantic problem. And we start from there. Bitcoin launches. It's just a bunch of cypherpunks and really nerdy guys who happen upon the experiment who were involved in this. And thank God they were. Thank God they were involved with it. And they kept Bitcoin alive, and Bitcoin grew into the crypto space that we know today in 2025. But what happened in between is maybe not exactly what Satoshi had in mind. So what happened in between is that Bitcoin, yes, it became very, very valuable. But because Bitcoin became so valuable, everybody realized that this novel way to achieve scarcity could apply to assets other than Bitcoin. First, we got Litecoin, basically just a fork of the Bitcoin code with a different, number of units of the asset possible. And then that was the first altcoin. Then we got a bunch of other altcoins. Then we got a heightened degree of expressiveness in Ethereum. We got Ethereum and smart contracts. And then all of a sudden, you didn't even need to fork the Bitcoin code. You didn't need to, code a new blockchain. You could just create coins. And in Ethereum, they were creatures that belonged to smart contracts. Eventually, you got things like Cardano, where assets can ride on the blockchain. Altcoins can ride on the blockchain. Cardano, of course, itself is an altcoin, but other coins in addition to Cardano can ride on the blockchain rails and be first-class citizens of that blockchain. So that's all great. That's great innovation and development in blockchain technology that's occurred. The problem is, instead of all of these projects, all these assets, all these tokens being related to something like the original Bitcoin invention, something that presented a lot of utility, new technology, something that actually improved the world, in my opinion, at least, and probably a lot, most people in crypto, in their opinion, Bitcoin probably was very innovative and presented new utility the world had never known before. Instead of the projects since Bitcoin doing that, a lot of them just looked at digital scarcity, this new invention of digital scarcity, and said, I'm going to do that. and it's going to be the best Ponzi scheme ever. I'm just going to do the best Ponzi scheme anybody's ever seen. And because it's going to ride on this new infrastructure that we call crypto, nobody's really going to call it a Ponzi out of the gate. I'm just going to, create a million different ways to slowly emit the token, and sometimes if you buy the token, just holding it, it'll emit more, which I think is also fine. Proof of stake was a great invention because it doesn't involve the energy expenditures that are involved in proof of work. And we don't need to get into that controversial discussion. I think Bitcoin proof of work is perfectly fine. I'm not saying the energy expenditures there are bad because they do achieve something, but proof of work, just black and white, objectively doesn't involve the same use of energy. So I think proof of stake is great. That was a great innovation as well. But all of a sudden, after maybe, after it became easy for people to create their own tokens, after tokens became creatures of smart contracts and it became a lot easier for anybody to create a token, you got this huge focus on Ponzinomics, and varying degrees of Ponzinomics. There was just like straight up Ponzi's, like, hey, the 2017 ICO craze, you had a huge number of ICOs and people would, buy in the ICO and hope the token goes up, and then they would all dump, a story that's been repeated ad infinitum in crypto. And then, it's like it became clear the SEC was going to go after ICOs, after EOS did like a $4 billion ICO, the biggest one ever, and the SEC went after them. It became clear you couldn't quite do that. So people came up with other ways to basically do the same thing. And, sometimes it adds some utility to it, or at least a story about some utility. It's like we switched to different things, for a while. We had, PFP NFTs, which, did add some utility in terms of fun. I would argue that PFP NFTs, there's utility in the fun that was created with those PFP NFTs. They were fun. Then we also did the Ponzi thing along with those. It's like, hey, you can have this brand new profile pic for X or whatever platform you want to use it on. It's so fun. There's 10,000 of them and they're all, like an animal. They're all the same type of animal, but they all look slightly different. So this is like unique to you. It's so cool. There's some utility there, but they were also doing the Ponzinomics thing. It was sort of like there was every single flavor and variety of PFP NFTs, and it was fun. There was some utility in the fun and being a part of a community. And, sometimes they'd even, like create these narratives around the utility, additional utility you were going to get out of being a part of that community, which is great. But there was also a heavy dose of the Ponzinomics going on there. And then at the end of the PFP NFT craze, which was last cycle, people sort of realized, hey, that trend is expiring. There's going to be a new trend. What should it be? Let's just do the same Ponzinomics stuff. And we'll just, instead of doing non-fungible tokens, we'll just do it with fungible tokens, which has, there's a little bit of, you have to acknowledge there's a little bit of truth in sort of the meme coin, sort of approach, because a lot of base layer tokens, they're also kind of meme coins. There were a lot of base layer tokens that launched, and it's kind of hard to distinguish some of those from regular meme coins. Sure, meme coins had a trend, instead of 10,000 different animals, sometimes there was just one animal, and it's like, let's all rally around this one animal, and that presented a lot of the same fun kind of utility, funtility that, NFTs did, because all of a sudden people felt like they were part of a tribe. There was a whole tribalism thing, I'm a part of this meme coin community. So it was a lot of the same kind of like funtility kind of stuff. But then there was also this huge sort of Ponzi driven, valuation thing. And, the more advanced projects, they added some utility, sometimes they'd create some kind of a platform that did something, and sometimes the platform was just to promote just to allow the emergence of other meme coins. They were making money on the platform, and doing other things to create a little bit of revenue from, basically the same thing they came from, which was the creation of coin token communities that were, at the end of the day, were driven by Ponzi-nomics. So that's all good and fine. We did that for a lot of the last 10 years. We had a lot of projects that were driven by token emissions and Ponzi-nomics, and it's okay. It's not like terrible or morally wrong that a lot of our industry was involved in that for the last 10 years, but it's time for us to actually do real businesses. So the great promise of crypto hasn't been Ponzi-nomics and, things that are totally centered on token emissions. The great promise of crypto has been that we would move real businesses onto the blockchain, that we would do real commerce on the blockchain. It's time for us to do that. This cycle hasn't worked out like we hoped it would. And part of the reason for that, the big reason is really the liquidity just wasn't there. We probably would have pumped like normal if there had been liquidity in 2025. There wasn't liquidity for all the macro factors we talked about. But another problem was everybody realized that crypto still wasn't doing the real stuff. We still weren't moving real businesses onto the blockchain. True, there are counterexamples. There are real businesses running on the blockchain today. It's just that they're few and far between. A lot of it is the Ponzi thing. There are some real businesses that run on the blockchain, and thank God for them. Bless those dudes who did that. Thank you to those people who are running real businesses on the blockchain. But I think the rest of the world outside of crypto sort of looked at crypto and they were finally like, okay, they're still doing the Ponzi thing. They're still doing penny stocks. They're still doing digital penny stocks. This is not the future they promised us when they talked about decentralization and all those things. They're really not doing all the cypherpunk stuff. They're just creating penny stocks and they're being traded back and forth. And a lot of the value accretion going on is really the Ponzi-nomics thing. I think that's part of the reason why this cycle we haven't reached, we still would have pumped if we had the liquidity, we still would have pumped. But part of the problem this cycle has been that we haven't been doing the real stuff. I think it's finally time for us to start doing real commerce. And I think with Midnight, we have a chance to do that. And I hope I think of Midnight as just the privacy layer of Cardano. I think of it as part of the greater Cardano ecosystem. And I think Midnight is that chance for us to do the real stuff. It adds some additional utility. All of the privacy we never had in crypto before. I mean, a couple privacy chains have presented similar approaches to privacy, but it's this brand new dose of privacy. And I think we can do a lot of real business stuff on Midnight. I think it's getting easier and easier for people to create dApps, decentralized applications that can run on a blockchain. And I think now that normal people are more able to launch things on the blockchain, I'm hoping we'll have a lot more real businesses launch on the blockchain. So I think this doesn't even have to be, these businesses don't even have to be brand new novel ideas. People could just start doing commerce on the blockchain. Like Cardano, the greater Cardano ecosystem is actually a lot of people. It's actually a lot of people who are involved in Cardano. And we all do stuff economically every single day. We all go to, service providers, professionals who provide us with various types of services. We all buy all kinds of things every single day. We could be doing that business inside the greater Cardano ecosystem. And now with the privacy that's going to be built into Midnight, that obstacle is removed because there's a lot of things, you probably don't want the entire blockchain to know about, you probably don't want all of Cardano to know exactly what kind of groceries you're buying. But I think midnight removes a lot of the problems there, and we can actually do the real commerce thing. So I hope what happens is that now that it's a little bit easier for people to build things, I hope normal people like me and you will actually build normal businesses on crypto, on midnight, on Cardano. I think it's time for us to do that. It's time for us to start trading with each other. We need to start doing commerce with each other. All of us do something during the day. We all have fiat mining jobs, or we did recently. We're all doing stuff economically every single day. We need to start doing that with each other. We need to become a real kind of network state. And it doesn't need to replace, at this point, it does not need to replace our national governments or whatever enthusiasm or lack thereof we have for our nation state governments, inside the jurisdictions of which we live now. It doesn't need to replace that at this point, but it wouldn't hurt us to start doing a little commerce with each other, start doing a little business with each other. I think that's what we've got to do. So we'll probably talk more about this as time goes on. But I think now, since we basically, so far at least, have had a failed 2025 in crypto, it's time for us to look at crypto and reevaluate what we've been doing. Because this whole PFP, NFT, meme coin, ICO thing we've done the last 3 cycles, those things, they're not really it. It was okay that we did that. It was fun, but now it's time for us to do real stuff. We need to actually start doing commerce on the blockchain. It's that time. So let's see what people are saying here. Okay. So BindoCam says, let's go before that. Okay. Joe Davidson says, I'll be honest, with the Google rumors and their whole advancement of the resources, I can foresee them using it a lot. We about to be rich. Okay, I hope so. Google, Michael says Google. 2009, but it was a Ponzi scam going to zero for a decade. Now suddenly it's financial messiah. Okay. We were part of the last age of non-vibe coded development. Yeah, this is I think all of us kind of make fun of vibe coding a little bit, but it's really it's really something. It's a real, this is something happening. Vibe coding is something real that's happening. Michael says perplexity. Joe Davidson says there's going to be a select few altcoins big industries take seriously, others they'll play with, but a few are going to be hoarded. Yeah, and there's a difference between sort of big industry doing business on blockchains, and there's blockchains becoming network states, or at least network economies. Think about how much commerce we collectively, all the citizens of Cardano, think about how much business we all do every day. If you think about the fiat business we do, the fiat economic activities we all produce, consume during the course of a day, it's a lot of business. We only have so much control over big industries and what they do, but we could start trading with each other. And I don't mean trading assets. I mean doing commerce with each other. There's probably a huge number of people who provide some kind of service or good, maybe have a small business, maybe don't. Maybe it's their hobby. Maybe it's a side gig they do. But there's a ton of people who do real world stuff, and we could do that on Cardano right now. We just don't do it. We don't do it because we're too busy doing Ponzi stuff. We're too busy doing meme coins with each other. We're too busy trying to make money off token emissions. We're too busy. Last cycle, we're too busy with PFP NFTs. Before that, we're too busy with ICOs, too busy with DeFi Summer. But all of us we all want Cardano to be more successful because we all basically own a part of the network, and we're all members. We're all citizens of this greater Cardano ecosystem. So we would all benefit from it doing better. And we've been overlooking the easiest way to make that happen. We just need to do business with each other on the blockchain. This is what the blockchain was built for. Satoshi wasn't like, hey guys, this is my white paper. I'm building this so that one day you guys can get Goldman Sachs and IBM to do deals on this thing I'm going to call blockchain. That's not what the white paper says. That's not why Satoshi was building it, right? Satoshi was building it so that all of us could do business with each other. He was specifically trying to dethrone the banks. He wasn't trying to, create another playground for big industry. He was trying to create an economic playing field for all of us. Michael says, I love your shows, man. You're great to listen to. I appreciate it and your efforts. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Dubai is built on blockchain. Yeah. I mean, when you've got places that have I would even say places. I would say in spaces where there's an abundance mentality, and I would argue Dubai is certainly one of those in some respects. There are good, decent arguments in the other direction, but I would say in a lot of ways, Dubai is a place with a lot of abundance mentality. You're going to have adoption of things like blockchains. So Dark Sky says, did you talk about stables entering the ecosystem yet? USDC, Tether, etc. Because isn't it said that when Clarity passes, trillions will flood stables and thus increase velocity of currency? So yeah, we've talked about Darth Sky. We've talked about stable coins quite a bit on this channel. I think there's a lot of utility in stable coins. Do I think a tier 1 stable coin is it the panacea that everybody hopes it is? I don't think so. Because we've had tier 1 stable coins enter other blockchains, and it hasn't had the miraculous effect that those blockchains hope for. Will it have an impact? Sure. Is it good? Sure. But I don't think it's exactly what people think it is. I think we've just got to start doing business on the blockchain. That's what we got to do. I mean, we all do economic activity every day. We've got to do that on the blockchain. If we're all citizens of this blockchain, we should do business with each other on the blockchain. To me, it's super straightforward. We just need to do that. We need to actually do it. Nobody wants to do it because it's not as quick a buck as doing the Ponzi-nomics thing or doing the DeFi degen stuff or meme coin or NFT casinos. Those are all much quicker bucks. You can produce moon Lambos a lot faster with that. But, how many moon Lambos did we get this cycle? We didn't, because everybody realizes that while we were promising them, the economy on the blockchain, what we gave them was Ponzi-nomics, and that was a quick buck for the project runners in a lot of cases. Even in Cardano, guys, some of those project runners made way more cash than you think they did. It was a quick buck for them, and that's why they built the thing that would produce the quickest buck, the most optimal extraction. But we need to shed those robes. We need to start doing business with each other. We need to be something that looks economically a lot more like a network state. We need to start doing business with each other. So Pascal says, I have a business I want to start on Cardano, but I don't know how to get traction on social media. I started a brand called Proof of Plate. I got all the socials set up. Okay. Pascal, tell us what it does. Tag me in your next post. Use that post to explain what you do. Tell everybody what it does. If it's a decent business, I think you just have to get the word out there that you're doing business. I'm not any kind of marketing expert, but I think that's exactly what we need. If you have a real business and you want to do business on Cardano, I think you just need to, start talking about what it is you do. And, that's the beginning. And then the rest of it is just kind of like normal business marketing. You're just doing it on, social media, on X, probably. Youth promo. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I appreciate you being here. Okay. Macroman says, I'm a full-time vibe coder, but really it just made it easier to learn software development and made me way faster to build. There you go. I think this is exactly what's happening. I don't think vibe coding is any kind of magical wand that allows you to not do any work. But like you said, everybody seems to agree. It makes it easier. Definitely makes it easier. Binocam says, my feeling is this is the calm before the storm. People tired of the scambo Lambo want to do something, and now government's eyeballing hard. Yeah, it's like we always had. It was kind of like we were like, yeah, we do a bunch of Ponzi stuff, but the real problem is the government. The government's getting in our way. They're holding us down. They're suppressing us because they're in league with the bankers. We said that for 15 years, guys, and now that's over. That's all over. We've got a super friendly government right now. They're not the problem anymore. The problem is us. The problem is that we've been doing Ponzi stuff for the last 10 years. That's the problem. And now that that whole government, mortal enemy is out of the way, we've got to do real stuff, because if we don't, it's gonna become it's already become obvious to everyone that we're the problem. It's because we haven't moved the real economy onto the blockchain. We've got to do it. So bam, 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 crypto. Greetings, salutations. So thank you for being here. You mean Midnight can help someone like a non-developer person to create very easily adapt? No, but I think some of the vibe coding tools out there have made it a lot more accessible for, pretty much exactly what Macro Man just said. Just the presence of better tools have made it easier for a lot of us to do things. And Midnight, Compact, the smart contract programming language of Midnight, is just TypeScript. TypeScript is just typed JavaScript. That's a lot easier than Haskell, guys. Haskell is a beautiful thing. I really appreciate the time I spent, as a beginner going through that huge book, those 600 pages. I think that was a really worthwhile experience. I think Haskell is great, but JavaScript's so much easier. JavaScript's so much easier, so much more approachable. It's so much more approachable. So yeah, I mean, I think Midnight having a much more widely adopted programming language is going to make it easier. The vibe coding stuff's going to make it easier. I think we're at a point now where a normal person can launch a dApp. Just like people vibe coded API mining software during the scavenger mine. Scavenger mine only lasted 21 days, and people vibe coded API mining software for it just by having AI read the specs that the Midnight Foundation put out. So it's very possible. It's very possible. Watch the during the Midnight Summit that happened in London over the last couple of days. There was a whole presentation. I talked about it last night in the video. Watch the video last night. There was a whole presentation where somebody was presenting a tool, and it was basically like, hey, use standard regular English. Tell the AI what kind of dApp you want to build. And, the way it was presented, the proposition was that it was going to build the smart contract for you and the front end. So, the web interface and the actual smart contract was going to build it all for you. I have no idea how well that's actually going to work, how much of that is accurate, how much human intervention is required after the fact. I don't know any of those things, but definitely we're at that point where things can change. Things can change. Brian Packard says, I want to use Cardano and digital assets as an option for my company, but I have no idea how, like most business owners. So there's a couple different, there's many different things, right? One part of it is sort of like you can do business on the blockchain. The other part of it is you can use the blockchain and digital assets as tools inside your business. During one of the panel discussions at the Midnight Summit, one of the panelists, who I believe was the head of I could be getting this wrong, but I believe he was the head of the Hoskinson family office. He was saying that he had a conversation with someone who was paying their payroll with crypto on the blockchain, and they were super excited about, or I should say, the reason this was brought up was because that person, was having problems, because if all of payroll was being paid out of the same crypto wallet, then everybody knew how much they were making in comparison to everybody else who's getting paid out of the wallet, which is problematic. But with Midnight, you could make that private. You could shield that data, and people would see that they're getting paid. They would get paid in their wallet, but Midnight would shield all the other payments coming out of that wallet. So, every single of the 15 employees of this person, everybody else couldn't see how much they were making in comparison to everybody else, which, obviously the employees would love that kind of transparency, but it's just not realistic to expect employers to, give up some of that privacy like that. So, there's a lot of things. There are things like that, there are ways in which blockchains can be tools to help somebody run a business. And there's also doing business on the blockchain. So, and I think you're right. I think most business owners like you probably have, similar feelings. They're like, sounds great, using Cardano or some other blockchain and the assets that ride on that infrastructure. Sounds great to use it for my business, but like how? I have no idea. I agree with you. I think that's what we've got to figure out this cycle. Maybe we're in a 5-year cycle. Maybe this is the end of this cycle. Nobody really knows. I always argue we don't really know what the market's going to do. It's like this organic wild beast. I stand by that. But whether this is a 5-year cycle or we're starting a new cycle and we're not going to see good days again until 2029, I don't know which of those it is, or if it's something completely different from those two. No matter what it is, like I think we've got to make this change, and we just got to start doing business on the blockchain. If we really think this is the future, we've got to make it the future. The way we make this the future is we start doing business with each other on the blockchain. And there's probably some businesses that just aren't susceptible. They're just not, the blockchain's just not good for them. There are probably certain types of businesses that maybe the blockchain's not, helpful at all. But there are a lot of businesses where it is. I think there's a lot of services and goods that all of us are dealing with every day. And we could just do that on the blockchain with each other. We could pay each other with ADA. It could be as simple as just paying each other with ADA for, the normal goods and services we're doing. We could just use ADA as money. We could use Night as money. We'd be doing business on the blockchain. I think there's even for a lot of goods and services, there are probably ways that the blockchain itself would be a value add to the provision of those services or the sale of those goods. But we could also just pay each other, on the blockchain, because after all, what was the original invention of Bitcoin, if not money? I mean, now we call it a store of value, but trust me, when I was getting into Bitcoin in that 2012, 2013, 2014 period, we very much thought of it as money. I never imagined there'd be a future where it would be unimaginable to use Bitcoin to buy things like coffee. I never thought that would happen, and it did. But we can use ADA and Night as money, or stable coins, even better. We can use USDM. Sir James says, we'll need to figure out how to bring my amazing fiat job as a travel agent to Cardano. See, this is great. You're providing a service. You're providing a service to people. Why don't you just hang out your shingle, Sir James, travel agent, figure out a way to get paid in ADA, start with just the payments happening in ADA and move from there. I think this is a great example. You're providing a service. Everybody understands the need for this service. It's like, we got to figure out ways to do this kind of business with each other on Cardano or on Midnight. We just got to do it. Otis Freechov says, is it just me, or is it odd that most people want stable coins that are pegged by the fiat systems we are trying to get away from? I agree. That has always struck me as wild. Like, the need for stable coins is super obvious to me. The utility is super obvious to me. Like, I want to be able to pay for things without having to calculate my gains or my losses on every single purchase, right? As it stands now, you have to calculate your gains or your losses on every single purchase, or sell. And with stable coins, that goes away because it's not going to change in value. You're not going to have gains or losses as soon as you're in the stable coin. So I think the stable coins are really important, but I agree with you. Why are we pegging it to the fiat system we're trying to get away with? The fiat system where the monetary base is forever being manipulated. I agree 100%. Cabaret Voltaire says, seems most people expect things to be free or for everyone to volunteer. Yeah, because of the way the web works and the way, sort of social media works, people have gotten used to getting stuff for free and being the product. Like, we all know that by now about social media. It's like, if you're getting something for free on the web, you are the product. It's become the same thing in crypto. In crypto, we've just allowed the same thing to happen. It's like, you get stuff for free because you are the product. And I think that's in some ways, that's part of the problem. I think in some ways it's part of the problem. Wow, Fusion Decor, 27,000 Night tokens. Okay, phase 1 and 2. Tell us how much you actually got mining. Good job either way, but tell us how much you got mining. That's good for you though. That's great. Okay, Pascal says, a food business owned by the Cardano community, operated by me as a food science student in Switzerland was the idea. Okay, I'm interested. That, like 7-second pitch, that 7-second written pitch, I'm interested. This sounds great. So, tag me in whatever your next post is, tag me, and I will love to read about it. Hey, AOS, are you familiar with Cardano's constitutional debt? Tell me what you mean by that. Tell me what you mean by that. I'm probably familiar with whatever, I might be familiar with whatever it is, but tell me what you mean by that. Okay. Okay, Adam says, so my friend was asking me when you can privately pay for OnlyFans with night tokens. So are we talking about there being an OnlyFans on midnight? Because that's probably a pretty good use case. Like people paying, I don't know how if OnlyFans works, to be honest with you. I don't know if people are paying with credit cards. How do you pay on OnlyFans? Do people pay with credit cards? I'm guessing that's it. It'd probably be a lot more comfortable. People would probably be a lot more comfortable if that was a shielded transaction. So maybe it's a great use case for it to be on OnlyFans. If the question is actually when will OnlyFans, the name brand platform, when will OnlyFans start accepting night tokens? That I don't know. Very funny question though. I like the thought though of wouldn't something like an OnlyFans run better on midnight? I'm sure once we all heard that midnight was going to be a privacy focused chain, what do we euphemistically call it? We call it not a privacy chain. We call it a privacy enabled chain, a shielded chain. We have like various euphemisms for it, so we don't have to call it a privacy coin. But I'm sure these kind of vice transactions are the ones that spring to mind immediately. Of course, they're going to be attracted to this. Cardano Universe says either start burning the supply or release the Kraken. Yeah, we need to release the Kraken in the case of midnight, because it sounds like that's going to be one of the big trading platforms. Okay, Macroman says, I tagged you in my Hydra factory repo I just dropped for simplifying building Hydra. Okay, thank you. Please, I will look forward to looking into that. Thank you. When will Cardano moon? Nobody knows. YC 8728. I'm sad to be the bearer of bad news, but actually, despite the protests and all the Fibonacci videos and people subtly trying to protest that they in fact are the ones who know when Cardano is going to moon, none of them actually know. They're all just doing male astrology. They're doing astrology for men, and some women consume it too, but mainly it's astrology for men. That's what those Fibonacci videos are. It's all just astrology for men. I'm sad to be the bearer of bad news. Excellent. Macroman paid his barber in ADA. There we go. We need to do this. Everybody go pester your barbers to accept ADA. Get him to do it. The times I've talked to people in real life about doing transactions in ADA, they've been surprisingly open to it. Like you kind of know beforehand who's, I feel like I kind of have an idea beforehand who's going to be more open to doing business in crypto, who's more open-minded. You can kind of tell just by how open-minded somebody is. But the people I've actually approached about this, I've been shocked how many people are like, cool, let's do it. It's kind of amazing. Everybody should do this. Pester your barbers to accept ADA. Everybody should do it. We should all do as much business in ADA and night as we can. Yeah, I mean, that's crypto invasion. This is perfectly logical for tax reasons, right? You're literally adding a line item to your taxes in the US if you buy or sell something in ADA. So it's like we all should do business in USDM. We should, or your native stable coin of choice on Cardano, whatever your stable coin of choice is. We all should do it. Absolutely. I can't even says business on the blockchain is probably the next to come. That will be a catalyst for the next bull run in the next cycle. I agree. This is what it's got to be. We've done the Ponzi-nomics thing too much. Nobody cares about our meme coins. Nobody cares about our NFTs. Nobody cares about our ICOs. People are fed up with all that stuff. They think we're nonsense people over all of that. But if we start bringing real business onto the blockchain, that's the reset. That's what we got to do. We got to be real people. We can't be nonsense people anymore. OnlyFans is paid with credit cards, but the owner actually wants to sell. AI models are being trained. Yeah, AI is destroying the whole industry of Instagram girls and their OnlyFans pages where they're monetizing all that. AI is destroying their world. There are a lot of Instagram models who are really OnlyFans models. That's how they monetize it. Some of them can monetize on Instagram, but some of them it's like, I'm sure largely they're OnlyFans. And their world is being destroyed by AI models right now. They can see the future. Their whole business model is getting destroyed. Okay. Pinocam says, insert time traveler post claiming things here. Yep, pretty much. Coop to Scoop KC says, need an easy way to accept payments. Tap to pay. An employee needs to be able to accept a payment. Yep. I 100% agree. We need to fix our off ramps and on ramps to the real world. This is an important thing, and it can't be exploitative. It can't be, there are cards that have existed for a long time, and I'm sure some of them are better, but also some of them there's a lot of potential to be paying spreads that you shouldn't have to pay, or fees you shouldn't have to pay, or there's like dangers of falling into debt. Some of them involve loans and you can get liquidated. There's just like a lot of pitfalls. Like some of them it's easy to fall into a lobster trap there. That's what I'm saying. We need better, more straightforward, less pitfall ridden on ramps and off ramps, less exploitation of us as we go across those ramps. I think it's fine for the providers of that infrastructure to get paid. They should get paid because they're providing us a service going from crypto to real world. But it's got to get better. It's got to get better. And there's been no demand to build. There hasn't been as much demand to build that out as there should have been, because we don't do real business on the blockchain so far. We just do our Ponzi stuff so far. So I think as soon as we start doing real business on the blockchain, then people are going to pop up who want to provide this service of better on ramps and off ramps, because we're going to become real people doing real stuff, real business. What is the best app to accept crypto in a company? I used to do this. I don't know a lot. Maybe people who are new to this channel don't know this, but I used to have, back in the day, I had sort of like a little, just like hobby business, a little side gig business. But it was a real brick and mortar business. Like it was in a building and people would come into that building and we would do business. And I accepted a lot of crypto in that business. I paid taxes on every cent, so I don't mind saying it here. Anybody, I would ask every single person if they wanted to do business in crypto. And this was kind of, I think we started, I don't know what year we started accepting crypto, but it probably reached its height during that 2017 period. And a lot of people would sit around, they'd be around there talking about crypto and paying in crypto. And man, back in those days, there weren't very many options. So I haven't done that in quite a while. So I actually don't know the answer to your question. What's the best app to accept crypto in a company? Maybe other people in the comments will know. I don't know these days, but back in the day, I was doing it back in 2017. Probably the first crypto I accepted in that brick and mortar business. It might have been in like 2015, even 24, maybe even 2014. I've got records. I'll have to go back and look. But yeah, it's definitely possible. I've done it. Binocam says, this is the reason I was voted for creating payment systems in Catalyst. Kind of stopped when nothing I voted for ever went anywhere and the things I voted against progressed. Good for you, Binocam. We need more people voting like you. We need more of that. Pucky Hawk says AI models on OnlyFans located on Cardano chain would make ADA owners into very rich porn addicts. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's like sort of social good versus social bad questions wrapped up in the whole OnlyFans thing. I'm not passing any judgment on whether that's socially good or socially bad. Obviously, I didn't even know how they get paid, so obviously, I've never used it. So I don't actually even know. Yeah, I mean, think of that discussion we had about it as being sort of that discussion excluding any questions of it being a social good or a social bad. Ocean Wi-Fi says, I'm a WISP. I need to inject ADA into payment system, but when most of your customers have major problems remembering passwords unless it's their phone number, it's going to be an uphill struggle somehow. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of the problems with moving businesses onto crypto rails currently are the same problems that crypto has generally, right? Like the same problems, like I would not hand my mom a seed phrase and just turn her loose with it, right? Or a ledger, a hardware wallet. I wouldn't just like hand her a ledger full of crypto and turn her loose with it. That'd be a recipe for disaster because a normal person who hasn't been involved in crypto, there's a lot of mistakes you can use. There's like a pretty significant learning curve, even just to using a hardware wallet or just like, good discipline around your seed phrase. There's a lot of ways you can screw that up, as we know, because theft and loss happens every single day. So I agree. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems. What is WISP? Is that something internet service provider? Is that what that is? Effectively nothing has happened on Cardano since the last cycle. Yeah, we just did a different Ponzi. I mean, that's all of crypto though. All of crypto, we just moved from ICOs. We had DeFi summer that presented some innovation. Like AMMs are kind of an innovation. But we kind of just moved from ICOs to PFP NFTs to meme coins, and they were all just kind of like different flavors of the same like Ponzonomics concept. We just kind of did that in different ways for 3 cycles. DeFi summer was kind of mixed in there, but even the governance tokens of a lot of the DeFi platforms were just also a different flavor of Ponzonomics. So Cardano versus I can't wait for Downvember to end. You and me both. We need a yellow pages for Cardano services. Joe Davidson, you just identified something that'd be very useful for the entire community. We've always had like these websites that are like, hey, here's all the projects on Cardano. And then they just show you a million different, NFT project. Like here's all the NFT projects, here's all the meme coin projects, here's all the DeFi projects. But what we don't have, maybe it exists and I just don't know about it, but what I don't know of existing is a yellow pages for real businesses on Cardano. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, we've had real businesses on Cardano. It's like, do you want internet? Do you live in a rural place where World Mobile is? They can actually provide you a real thing, internet, and then they're a project, right? They're a project we know about. So there are real projects on, on Cardano or have been on Cardano, yeah, why don't you create that yellow pages? Why don't you create that yellow pages and come back and tell us where we can find it? You probably got yourself a little business there. You could run advertising on it as people access it. Hopefully minimal advertising, but I mean, it could be a real revenue producing business. Like CMC was started by one guy before Binance ever bought it. It was like CMC was started by one guy. All they did was report the price. They reported the price of all the projects, and I forget how much it sold to Binance for, but it was very significant. I want to say it was like 10 million or something like that. One guy started that company. You could start yellow pages of Cardano. Anything from Gravitation. What is Gravitation? At Cardano, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. I'll take people early, on time, late, whatever. Thank you for joining, no matter what time it is. Yeah, that's what I saw. Patty and Paul's software, I believe, said 15 point something per answer. So that was a great final day. Brian Packard says that's probably a good idea. I think there is some list of resources, but not so much for individuals. Yeah, I mean, why don't we have a list? Why don't we have a list of, professional service providers? There's probably got people out there who make things that they sell on eBay, and they're probably Cardano people, and we could all be buying that thing from them. Maybe somebody makes soap. We could all be buying Cardano soap from that person, and they could be mailing it to us. We could be paying them in ADA. There's just a million. I mean, we're all doing things, and there are probably some people are doing some things that aren't as susceptible to selling to each other across Cardano rails. But there are a lot of people who have small businesses. We could be buying their products and services. There are people who have side gigs. My significant other, goes to these farmers markets all the time. Yesterday, a really nice spatula, a wood spatula, showed up at my house. And I'm like, where did this come from? The farmer's market. Some dude just carves these out of wood and sells them at the farmer's market. It was inexpensive, but it was like a wood spatula. It was cool. I mean, who knows? Maybe that guy who made that is a Cardano guy, and he could be selling that to us. There's so many things. There's so much business we could be doing that's just being lost to the fiat world, and it could be a Cardano transaction. Gravity Dex. Okay. I don't even know what Gravity Dex is, but that makes more sense. That makes more sense to me. Okay. Oh, interesting. No batchers or additional infrastructure. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying this Gravity Dex does not have batchers and it runs on Cardano or Midnight, I'm guessing? BindoCam says, honestly, though, we lost a lot of progress with the Gensler oppression. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there was government oppression, no question. It was there. It's no longer there. Now it's on us. It's on us to actually become an economy, right? We're nowhere near becoming a Balaji style network state because we haven't even become an economy yet. We've just been tied up in Ponzi-nomics. We've been doing Ponzi-nomics for the last 10 years. So, I mean, a lot of the blame is on us for not making progress too. I can't even says for wide adoption, blockchain needs to have less friction and lower learning curve, kind of like how anyone can just get on their phone and pull up a website, even if that's OnlyFans. Exactly. It needs to be real easy. Like you literally, if you're a person in Cardano, you should be opening up the yellow pages we just talked about. You should be opening up those yellow pages, and you should be going to, when it's time to buy whatever, the soap guy, the guy who makes soap, Paper Street Soap Company, you should be able to pull up Tyler Durden's, Cardano Paper Street Soap Company. And, he's like, hey, here's my soap buying DApp. Here's a link to my soap buying DApp. And then you just go on there and you shoot him some ADA, along with your address, and he's going to mail you out your Cardano soap. Like it should be that easy for sure. Mission Zambia, good morning. Okay, wireless internet service provider. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I'm guessing, a wireless internet service provider is the kind of business that could be in the Cardano yellow pages of real commerce. And probably a lot of people, if they're in the right, geographic area to make use of your services, probably a lot of people would much rather send ADA to your WISP than to whoever they're paying for wireless internet service. I'm guessing. I think our cohesion as a group is probably a lot greater than people even understand. Like, I would much rather send USDM to somebody to buy whatever almost than I would, buy it in the fiat world. I'd much rather promote, do something that creates volume on the Cardano network. I can't even says, think AOS fans have some pretty good ideas here on comments. Something special here. Maybe we can start business on Cardano for the next cycle. Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it now. This is the beginning. Let's make this the beginning of business on Cardano. Maybe that's it. Hashtag do business on Cardano. Maybe it just needs to be a hashtag campaign. maybe we all just need to start adding that hashtag on X. Do business on Cardano. When people ask you about it, just explain like, yo, we all do things. We all do economic activities every day. Let's do them on Cardano. D.U says, been listening as always. You already know that like is always smacked. Thank you, D.U. Man, very much appreciate that. Palm economy could be a start. Exactly. I keep saying I want to learn more about Palm economy because I like the founder in terms of his presence on social media. I still don't know that much about Palm economy, but I mean, just from the outside, given the 1% that I know about them, it seems like they're doing real business. It seems like they're doing real business on, I don't know anything about the token or how any of that works. Probably don't, I don't really want to know anything about the token, but I like the fact that they seem to be delivering real goods to people. I see people opening up like bottles of olive oil somehow linked to the Palm economy. And that seems like real business. It seems like they're doing real business. Sir James says you are onto something. When are we getting stable coins? Well, we've got some native ones right now. We've got USDM right now. I mean, there's not really anything stopping us from using USDM to do real business. The reason why people want higher liquidity stable coins is because they get, we have incidents like the other day where somebody burned millions and millions of dollars worth of ADA to, swap to stable coins, and it depegged the price of that stable coin inside that pool. So, I mean, people want higher liquidity stable coins, and that usually makes them ask for tier 1 stable coins, but you don't necessarily need that. Even that depeg was a temporary depeg, right? How long did that last? If you're just buying, soap from Tyler Durden's Cardano Paper Street Soap Company, you don't really care about that, right? That's not really as important. You could just send him USDM. You'd be fine. You send him the USDM, and if it depegs in between him getting his, $6 for the bar of soap, if it depegs for half an hour because somebody YOLO'd into, burning $6 million, if it happened like the other night, the peg's going to return by the time it's time for him to do something with that USDM, right? I mean, at least that's what happened the other night. I'm not saying that these native Cardano stablecoins are immune from permanent depegs or anything like that, but I am saying the need for liquidity is, a lot of that is linked to DeFi and not to doing normal businesses like we're talking about. Need to just tokenize all that soap. I mean, you can get into financialization of businesses by tokenizing, and kind of commoditizing products and services. And that's a thing, and maybe we should do that too. But a good start would just be the dude accepting ADA or NIGHT or USDM for the soap. That'd be a good start. Like, let's treat ADA as money. Let's treat NIGHT as money. Let's do the money thing first. That's like the start. It's like everybody goes directly to, let's do the most complex financialization we can. How about we just use the damn cryptos as money first? You know what I'm saying? I think your point is an important one. I'm not trying to minimize your point. I think that's an important point that we can do really cool stuff with blockchains. But I'm also saying we need to start with doing the basic stuff. We just need to do the basic stuff that we've always promised we were going to do, and we just never did because it wasn't the quickest buck. Pucky Hawk says, this is all above my skill level, but if hardware wallets had a mode to buy stuff and the retailer had a program that talks to it, that might be a way to make buying easier. Yeah, like, where's the button on my ledger that lets me buy groceries? Like, where's that button at? So you start getting into the conversations about cards when you talk about that. And, the problem with cards is kind of the fees and the spread and those kind of things and other pitfalls. But yeah, that's a good question. Where's the button in Eternal or Lace or Yoroi that lets me buy soap? Where's the button that lets me buy groceries? Charles, put a button in Lace that lets me buy Tyler Durden soap. Let's start the movement. Hashtag do business on Cardano. Thank you, Pascal. Let's do it. Hashtag do business on Cardano. We just need everybody to do business on Cardano. There we go. Okay, yeah, I can't even also joined in there. I think we do kind of need to make this transition. It's like, it's kind of a painful transition because all of crypto has kind of been set up lately to just do, you know, the Ponzi stuff. We're like not even set up anymore to do real stuff, but it's pretty, I mean, we just need to make the decision to make this shift. Pascal says, I need to contact Palm because my food business would really fit in. Maybe they can become a partner. Yeah, contact Dan Friedman. Talk to him. Talk to Dan Friedman. He seems like the kind of dude you could just hit him up and I'm sure he would talk to you and he'd either explain why it is a good fit or it isn't. But yeah, maybe that's a great start. Love that joke. Good morning. Thank you for joining. Even if we had USDC, someone would still have to mint and supply liquidity. Great point. Great point. Yep. It's not a cure-all. Cardano Universe says, release the Kraken. Sir James says, just finished directing my 16 browsers to the DFO mining drop. Hopefully not a rug pull. Barth, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Crypto Invasion says, I'm not saying that I do this, but even if the stablecoin is not available in your state, you can use a VPN. Okay, this is a technical point. This is a technical point that people should be aware of. VPNs do exist. I'm not saying this is a good idea or a bad idea or legal or not legal, nothing like that. But I think the point does stand that VPNs exist. That is the thing. Is there an advantage for a company to accept ADA over fiat, or does it need to have a decentralized control? Is there an advantage for a company to accept ADA over fiat? It depends. I mean, it depends on what kinds of fees you're paying to accept fiat. You know what I mean? It's like, so when we think about the use case of crypto as money, the question is sort of like, is it better than money? So the kind of like the bigger picture argument for that is that hard cap cryptos like ADA and Bitcoin are better than fiat because they don't get debased. So if you're going to hold that fiat long term after you earn it, then I would argue it's definitely better to have ADA or Bitcoin because it's not going to get debased, right? It's like Bitcoin has gone up a crazy amount against the dollar since its inception. The same thing is true of ADA. It's gone up a crazy amount since its inception. It would have been better to hold ADA since 2017 than to hold an equal amount of dollars. The same is true of Bitcoin. The same is true of a lot of other cryptocurrencies. So there's that piece. And then you get the piece where it's like crypto as money. Like, is it cheaper to do business in ADA or is it cheaper to do business in dollars? It depends. It depends on how much you're paying in dollars right now, you know. So there's some discussions tied up in that. And I do think there are some businesses where you're probably better off doing it in fiat. I think that exists too, for sure. But there's a lot of businesses that could come on the blockchain for sure. I Can't Even says, I'm willing to volunteer my time to be a PM for the Cardano Yellow Pages project. Okay, get together with the person who suggested it. Get together and put together the Cardano Yellow Pages. Make it real businesses. Leave out all the Ponzi-nomic stuff and just make it real businesses. We should actually do this. This is a good idea. Do business, #do business on Cardano. Is that what we called it? Is that what the hashtag was? Do business. Yeah, do business on Cardano. That was the hashtag. I wonder if we can get Steam to accept Cardano. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think the way to get big companies, this has always been sort of like this pipe dream in crypto. How do we get businesses like Steam? Steam's one we go to all the time because I think a lot of people in crypto are gamers. So we go to stuff we're familiar with, which includes Steam. And we ask, how do we get them to accept crypto? I think we think about this the wrong way. We approach it the wrong way. So instead of thinking, how great would it be if this giant company accepted Cardano, if they accepted ADA, instead what we should think is, how do we grow grassroots use of Cardano? Because if a huge number of people are doing business with each other on Cardano using ADA, it's going to be a lot easier to sell that idea to Steam. Like, if you go to Steam right now and you're like, hey, you guys should accept ADA, they're going to be like, okay, well, how many people accept ADA? And you're going to be like, well, I used ADA to buy a meme coin once. That's not going to be convincing to them. But if you're like, yo, there were 10 million transactions last month, real world, lawyers, accountants, soap makers, all accepting ADA, then if you have those kind of numbers, you might be able to sell it to Steam. Need ADA bots on social media like BTC does. Yeah, I mean, that'd be one approach. I would prefer we just do real business. Patrick says, my computers can rest now. Yep, we were talking about that earlier. All of our computers can rest. Yep. Do business on Cardano. To me, my ADA is worth a lot more than it is now. It would be really hard for me to spend my ADA currently, kind of chicken and egg scenario. Yeah, I mean, we can make it. The beautiful thing is we have native cryptocurrencies. It's like when we're going to do a transaction, we could just do it in USDM. You could buy new ADA. You could buy new ADA and swap it into USDM. And I mean, even if everybody started small, if everybody just started with $10, if you just went, to whatever is your fiat on ramp, whatever centralized exchange, Kraken or Coinbase or Binance or whatever, and just bought, $10 worth of new ADA and then bought USDM with it. And then we just started doing business. That would be a start. That'd be a great way to start. But I agree with you. Nobody wants to spend, if you have a low cost basis in your ADA, nobody wants to spend out of that bag. Like none of us do. None of us do spend out of those bags because our cost basis is too low and we're going to incur tax liability. So, maybe we go out and, just buy new ADA, convert that to USDM, and we spend that. So Johnny Walker says such a great buying opportunity. Yep. Feels that way. Okay. S. Walker, don't worry. We'll wash that Solana right off of you. Yeah, it's we've done a lot of meme coin casino type stuff in crypto. That's for sure. That is for sure. So let's talk about some of the posts, some of the things that happened today. So we saw the end of the glacier drop. I know that we spent a long time not actually talking about the news from today, but we should definitely try to get through some of the news. So phase 2 of the glacier drop is officially closed. Thank you. This is the Midnight Foundation. Thank you for showing up day after day for the energy, the effort, the momentum you brought over these 21 days. You made scavenger mine what it was. Final night totals may still be calculating for some users. Like a lot of people probably noticed the official Midnight Foundation miner, it was not reflecting your full balance at the end of the mining period. At least it wasn't for me. It kind of took a couple hours to get the it kind of showed I had earned nothing in terms of the total number of night, and then it took a couple hours to reflect the full amount. And here's the important part. Reminder, if you haven't consolidated your allocations yet, you have until November 21st at 0 UTC. So for anybody who wants to consolidate and hasn't yet, that's your deadline. You've got till November 21st at 0 UTC. Okay, Adam says, I think after the market structure bill gets passed and Midnight is released to build on, these two things will make doing real business more attainable. Yeah, I think the privacy stuff, I think, it sounded like Charles was just doing his normal Charles marketing job when he talked about how real businesses wouldn't be able to use crypto because it's too transparent. I think that's real. I think that's very real. And a lot more business can be done when it's like that payroll, like the payroll example that the panelist gave. It's like, you don't want all of your employees to see exactly how much you're paying all the other employees. That causes problems, right? You don't want that in any normal business. And I hate to use the trite expression, but Midnight fixes this. Yeah. What real world assets can I buy with ADA? Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. What real world assets can I buy with ADA? Like I keep saying, I don't know too much about Palmyra, Economy, Zengate Global. I don't know too much about what they're doing, but it seems like people are definitely buying things like olive oil. You know, I know that might not be the kind of real world asset you're thinking of, but it is like a commoditized thing. Like olive oil is a commoditized thing, which is like a type of asset. So Um, Johnny Walker. Ooh, that's a tall order. Johnny Walker's asking, do you think that they will follow through with no tax on US-based crypto? That's a pretty tall order. I think that's the kind of thing you promise in an election cycle, and whether or not you can actually get that through Congress, I wouldn't count on that one. I wouldn't count on that one, man. That's tough. I wish it was true because it's definitely good, but I wouldn't count on that one happening. That's kind of a tough one for sure. That's kind of a tough one. So, okay. So another thing we've got going on is we saw a price prediction from our friend Charles. So we saw this from Charles, this interview. Charles gave this interview from London, and Charles sort of predicts $250,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2026, something like that. Not in those exact words, but he basically says that number, I can't remember exactly what he said. Basically, wouldn't be surprised, we see $250,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2026. Granted, Charles and number predictions, famously, notoriously, he had the predictions about how many dApps and assets would be on Cardano, like 1 year after Goguen launched. That turned out not to be true. So I'm not a fan of appeal to authority generally, but I thought it was interesting. Just sort of like a peek into the psychology of Charles, that he was willing to say this in an interview. I don't think the predictive value of this is, necessarily anything, but I think it's interesting that he was willing to say that on this broadcast. $250,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2026. I'm not sure if I said Bitcoin. I might have accidentally said Cardano, but he was definitely talking about Bitcoin. At Cardano says World Mobile unfortunately can't buy the eSIM with ADA. Okay, I haven't followed World Mobile in a while. I've always said, since the very beginnings of World Mobile, I've always said that I love their mission to connect the unconnected, but I haven't followed how you actually buy their service in a long time. I can't even says, really wish the naming was different. Buy night to generate dust for transactions doesn't really go well in current times. Maybe for us, but not for the mainstream. Yeah, you might have a good point there. Acrodon says, I did renew my NordVPN with ADA though. You can do that. They accept ADA. I didn't even know that. Is that just in the is that right in their interface, or how do you accomplish that? Okay, so another bit of news. So we saw this from Scott Bessent, head of Treasury. So Scott Bessent basically gave this interview, and they talked about a couple different things. They talked about the baby, I'll just call it the baby money. So this is the current administration's plan to basically drop money into accounts that would be invested in the equities markets for babies. So it's like all babies born for the next 3 years after January 1st. This is what's being described. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but talking about, dropping $1,000 into an account for babies born over this time period. It gets invested in the equities markets. And then when they turn 18, they get the money. Kind of an interesting idea. It's like an interesting way to introduce liquidity. If you think about it, it's just a way to inject liquidity into the equities markets. So that's kind of interesting. Scott Bessent also talked about the $2,000 dividend check. And he said that's sort of like everybody knows he kind of tried to walk it back when Trump first tweeted about that. Trump had a post about giving everybody $2,000 checks, and Scott Bessent walked it back, and he was like, maybe that's the no tax on tips. Maybe that's the way you get the $2,000, dividend. Maybe that's part of it, so he definitely walked it back, made it sound a lot weaker. And here it was basically, he was basically asked again about it. And he basically said, a lot of things could happen next year, but then he just had a lot of optimistic things to say about how next year is going to be so great for the average American. So we'll see about that. Okay, NordVPN has an option to pay with ADA. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. Yep, I think we're all gonna have to check our NordVPN to see if we can pay with ADA. I agree. So this was also interesting for the future of Midnight. I thought this was very interesting. So even the Winklevi are in on the privacy trend. The Winklevi, not friendly to Cardano. Gemini, as far as I know, not listing Cardano, but they are in for privacy. So who knows? Maybe when Midnight launches, maybe they'll be down. Obviously, here they're referencing Zcash with this image, but maybe when Midnight launches, maybe Charles is onto something here. Maybe Midnight is going to catch the wave of privacy. If even the Winklevi, who are famously kind of, obviously Bitcoin, very involved with Bitcoin, maybe a lot more people than we think will be down with Midnight. So somebody in the comments up above we have a travel agent in the comments up above, and are you referencing the person who was a travel agent, or are you referencing someone? Okay, said they wanted to accept ADA for travel. I think that was for travel agent services, unless there was another one I missed. Okay, I can't even says ready for those World Liberty Stimmy checks. That would be converted to ADA. Hopefully, that'd be good if whatever stimulus we get, if some of that ends up in the Cardano world, that'd be great. Gemini got no night airdrop. Interesting. So they will, I'm sure that they would be less enthusiastic about Midnight if that's the case, for sure. Well, I mean, they can only blame themselves. So if there's no ADA on their exchange, then they would get no night airdrop. So, but I guess they would have had some of the other assets. If they got no airdrop for the other assets, then they might be mad about that. Okay, price fluctuation and privacy are the biggest obstacles for the normies, in my opinion. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, hopefully stablecoins and privacy chains like Midnight solve that. He was talking about if that's a question about Scott Bessent. He was talking about 2026, by the end of 2026. If I said 2025 by accident, apologies. So I may have accidentally said 2025, but he was definitely talking about 2026. So apologies for that. Here's something else. So yesterday we talked a little bit about the Saudi delegation to the White House. Today we had the U.S.-Saudi Economic Forum going on, and it's kind of interesting. Here we see Jensen and of NVIDIA and Elon of Tesla, and of course, 2025 has not been the best year between these two, between Elon and Trump. So kind of interesting, this was important enough for Elon and Trump to be, within a Jensen of each other. I'll call that within a Jensen of each other. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And Elon had something to say, I think, at the kind of the Saudi US Economic Forum that I thought was pretty interesting. So that was this. So Elon said, and people covered this quite a bit, so you probably saw this on X Day, but Elon said that he believes the combination of AI and humanoid robots will eliminate poverty and make everyone wealthy. I've been repeating this to everybody I ran into today, just as kind of like a little pump up, and people have been people had various reactions to this. Some very negative when I repeated this, and some like slightly more positive. But I was surprised how resistant people were to this. I don't know if it's because they're embracing the Skynet T1000, kind of like possibilities. If they're worried about that, or if they just, things are so rough right now, they just can't believe that this could be possible. But I personally love this kind of optimism. And I don't know whether this can be real or not, but I sure hope it is. I think it'd be great if this was real. Okay, did Coinbase get a night airdrop? That's a good question. I assume, actually, I don't know. I remember when we got the news that Kraken, didn't we got news that Kraken was going to pass that along to their users, right? I believe we never got that news from Coinbase. So that's a good question. Did Coinbase actually get an airdrop or not? I don't know the answer to that. At Cardano says, I guess it was up to Coinbase to organize the airdrop. So if Coinbase got the night, then it would kind of be up to them whether they give that to the users or not. My question is, did Coinbase get the airdrop? S Walker's dog is not down with the Optimus robot walking it. I could see problems there. I could see dogs being a little troubled the first time you try to have Optimus walk them. I could see some problems occurring there. Okay, thank you to Another Perspective for tagging me in this one. So this is what somebody mentioned in the comments. So if we click on this, let me say beforehand, I don't know anything about this project. I know nothing about this project. I don't know if they're good, if they're bad. I don't know if this proof of work experiment they're talking about is good or bad. I don't know if you should do it, if you shouldn't. I don't know anything about it, so I can't vouch for it in any way, but they said, midnight is here as promised. We loved how Midnight Network launch night, the scavenger mine, was legendary. So we're fully aligning. Our DFO token will be mined using the exact same privacy-preserving, ZK-proof, on-chain treasure hunt model as Midnight. 14 days of pure chaos, Sybil resistant, zero pre-sale, zero VC. The fairest launch in DeFi is coming. And then they give you their white paper at defensio.io. Again, I can't vouch for them. I don't know anything about them. The first time I ever even saw that name was when I was tagged in this post. So if anything goes wrong, if you participate, anything goes wrong, don't blame me because I'm not vouching for them. I don't know anything about them, but I thought it was fair to make everybody aware of this. It is kind of interesting. If you had a really good time during the scavenger mine, I thought it was worth making people aware that people are talking about another little mining experiment there. So BindoCam says, I always leer when I see predictions of grandeur that skip the how and go straight to utopia. Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that because Elon famously, I think it was Elon, a long time ago, Elon gave an interview where people asked him like, okay, how do you hire well? And his response was, okay, in every interview, the prospect, the candidate, is going to tell you about wonderful things they did. And the way, I'm paraphrasing and I'm probably going to mess this up, but my recollection is he said, the way you can tell if they actually did the thing or not, because he was like, indicating that a lot of people would be lying. The way you can tell whether they actually did the thing or not is if they can explain how they did the wonderful thing they said they're doing, which was super hilarious because right after he came out with that interview, I had an interview where I had done an interview with some founders of like a pretty well-known crypto project. I think this might have even been before Cardano launched. It was definitely way before this channel, but it was maybe even before Cardano launched. But I did this interview and the founders of the project loved me. And then I had to, and I just wanted to work in crypto. I was like interested in working in crypto. And then I did an interview with like this middle manager who was working with those founders. And he asked me about it was so funny because he asked me about something that I actually had done in a prior role. And he had obviously just watched the Elon interview because he immediately went down the same line of questioning that Elon went through, which I thought was hilarious. But Okay, at Cardano says, sounds sketchy to me. Also, when you mined through them, you had to DApp connect, no manual address option. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. It could be sketchy, could be not. I don't know anything about those guys. I just thought it was worth pointing out that it exists. Don't know if it's good or bad at all. I can't even says I'm out. Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty, I'll admit, I'm pretty hesitant to connect my wallet to anything. I'm like very, very hesitant to connect my wallet. And even with the Midnight Foundation miner, when I connected my wallet to do anything with the Midnight Foundation, man, I looked at my ledger and read every single character my ledger presented to me. As I was going through that, I looked at every single thing my ledger showed me in detail. Joe Davidson says, I'm vibe coding right now. Who wants to help me fund this? Because I'm broke. Vibe code something awesome. And I'm sure you will, you'll find commensurate success to how awesome the thing you create is. Dr. Doak says, I like him, but he said 250 to 500K for 2025. All right, was that Charles? Was that Charles's prediction for 2025? If so, I also like Charles very much, but yeah, I mean, I'm like, I think the appeal to authority for any individual in crypto should be not only taken with a grain of salt, but it should be given no value. The authority of anyone to predict the Bitcoin market or any other market should be like zero. So James Syracuse says Brian Armstrong is getting the airdrop all for himself to sell. Wouldn't that be quite the deal if Brian Armstrong just like nuked the markets by selling all of the night himself. It's funny. I told people like a year ago about the night airdrop, and I was like, listen, there's gonna be this airdrop, and I have a suspicion if you keep your people who I've known for years who don't know about this channel or know my involvement in the Cardano ecosystem, but know I'm a Cardano person. This is obviously somebody I know in the real world. This person, they've always kept their ADA on Coinbase. And I've tried so many times to convince them to take their ADA off Coinbase. And this is a smart person. This is like a sophisticated person. They've just never been persuaded to do it because it's so convenient. So I told them a year ago, look, there's going to be this airdrop of this new partner chain called Midnight. You're going to get these night tokens, but there's a good chance you're not going to get them if you keep your ADA on Coinbase. Will you please take your ADA off Coinbase just so you can get this airdrop? And this person doesn't have like $10 worth of ADA. They have much, much more than that. They have like a significant amount of ADA. And as far as I know, they didn't do it. Even knowing they wouldn't get the airdrop. Even when I warned them, Coinbase probably won't give you the airdrop. I have not heard that they took their tokens off Coinbase. That's how bad it is. At Cardano says, would be even funnier if it was Brian Armstrong API mining. If Brian Armstrong was the guy who got 1 million night tokens API mining since day one. I mean, there's probably engineers at companies like that who are very, very familiar with proof of work, very familiar with mining, who find out about something like the scavenger mine. And maybe even if they don't have any interest at all in Midnight or Cardano, maybe they were just like, oh, well, what is the, let's look at the API documentation. And they're like, okay, let's give this a shot. There's probably guys like that who can optimize the mining very, very well and, would just collect up those tokens and sell them the second they get them. For sure, that's probably true. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to make sure people knew about is this. So today we got the Midnight Summit Hackathon demos. So it's kind of interesting. If you want to see where Midnight might be going in terms of dApps, right? Like obviously the dApps are going to launch during not the very first phase, the very first era. The other night we talked about the different eras of Midnight, just like Cardano had Byron, Shelley, Voltaire, Basho, Gauguin. Just like we had these different eras in Cardano that focused on different things, Midnight has different eras. There are Hilo, Kukolu, Mohalu, and Ua. Apologies to any native Hawaiian speakers. Certainly don't have any skills in that department. But the dApps aren't going to launch during Hilo. Apparently, if I understood Charles's presentation correctly, the dApps launch during Kukolu, which is still just Q1 of 2026. But if you want a preview of dApps that could be launching, apparently during Kukolu, which is Q1 of 2026, so like the next quarter, you might want to look at these hackathon demos. There's quite a few interesting things. There's like a really big focus on, I would say a pretty big focus on not so much B2C stuff. It's not so much stuff like retail products that we're all going to jump on and use, but it's more like very pragmatic, realistic, B2B kind of things, or, sort of things for like the back ends of businesses, the kind of stuff that like actually makes money. Like the hackathon participants seem to be like pretty smart about choosing, use cases where they can really attack some, like niche where the customers would definitely be businesses. These are definitely like B2B kinds of products, which is smart. I mean, it seems like those are the kinds of businesses that, don't get as much press because they're not B2C, but they tend to make a lot of money. It seems like a lot of the products are those kind of things. There were some B2C things in there, I think, but there was nothing where I was like, oh, this is the one everybody's going to be talking about because everybody's going to want to use this. A lot of the energy seemed to be devoted to B2B stuff, but there were some things that people are going to be excited about, I'm sure. So you might want to check out that video. It's the hackathon demos. It's pretty long and there's a lot of projects, but it might be worth a scroll through if you just want to see what kind of dApps are going to be launching on what kind of dApps might be launching on Midnight. BindoChem says the guy that pulled that 1.3 million was a high-level systems engineer, had every possible resource and the skill to use it. Yeah, I mean, good for him. I mean, of course, took some level of, sacrifice to achieve the skill set that dude has. And, good on him for outcompeting us. I mean, that's pretty much the essence of capitalism. This dude had knowledge and capacities that the rest of us don't have, and he used it to outcompete us. So, he provided the scavenger mind with what the scavenger mind demanded, which was compute. The whole purpose of the scavenger mind was for all of us to provide compute, and this guy was able to provide compute more effectively than the rest of us. So, makes sense that this was a high level engineer, but good for him. He used his skills. I'm sure his skills were hard fought, and he used those to outcompete us. So, good on him, I guess. So I think that's about all the news that I noticed today. But this is this theme about crypto needing to reset and for us to hashtag do business on Cardano. This is something I'm going to keep coming back to because I really think I've been thinking a lot about this cycle and what crypto should do, what would help crypto, what would push crypto forward, what would push Cardano forward, how Cardano and Midnight can go forward together. And I think this is it. We've done every version of Ponzi-nomics driven stuff. We keep reinventing it in different guises. It's like ICOs, then NFT, PFPs, then meme coins, governance tokens for DeFi platforms. We keep inventing all these different ways to have token issuances and Ponzi-nomics. That phase needs to end. We need to be done with that, and we need to Hashtag do business on Cardano. We need to just do the thing we've always pretended like we were doing, the thing we always said we were going to do. We need to actually bring business onto the blockchain. We need to do real business. If we're ever to become a network state, I don't even know if we need to become a network state, but we do need to become an actual network economy. So I'm going to keep coming back to this. Some people will be on board. Some people will not. Some people will think it's too unrealistic. It's too easy just to do the Ponzi-nomics thing. It's too easy to invent new ways to do, weird token issuances to get people to hold on to the token. It's too easy to do all that stuff to get people to be bag holders in the Ponzi-nomics. Some people will say that's the case. I think if we're to move forward, we really need to do business on Cardano. So I'm going to keep coming back to this. I hope everybody had a great time in the Scavenger Mines. I think this was a really good event for the greater Cardano ecosystem. I hope everybody's looking forward to a great rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon.